I've always believed that trust, like a safe, is built to protect what matters most. For 15 years, Kate and I shared everything, our home, our dreams, and yes, even that small black safe in our home office. It wasn't anything fancy, just a basic model we bought when we first moved in together, but it held our life. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed to our house, and those small gold trinkets Kate inherited from her grandmother. Security is everything, Kate would say, her fingers dancing across the keypad with practiced ease. She's always been the organized one, the meticulous accountant who color-codes spreadsheets and labels everything in her neat handwriting. I love that about her, how she made chaos feel manageable, how she turned our shared life into something structured and safe. I run a small business selling custom furniture, and Kate handles all our finances. It worked perfectly. I built things. She kept track of them. The safe was her domain, but we both knew the code. 0317, our wedding anniversary. Simple, meaningful, secure enough for our needs. Or so I thought. It started with small things. Kate began checking the safe more frequently, usually when she thought I wasn't watching. She'd slip something in or take something out, always turning her body slightly to block my view. At first I brushed it off. Maybe she was planning a surprise for our anniversary, or handling some sensitive work documents. Then came the code change. "I just feel better this way," she said casually one evening, not meeting my eyes. "You know how everything's going digital now. Better safe than sorry, right?" I nodded, waiting for her to share the new combination. She didn't. That night, lying in bed, I caught myself staring at the ceiling, replaying the slight tremor in her voice, the way her shoulders tensed when I walked into the office while she was at the safe. 15 years of marriage teaches you to read the small signs, the tiny shifts in behavior that signal something's not quite right. The safe sits there now, a dark square of certainty in our lives turned uncertain. Every morning I pass by it on my way to the office, and every morning it seems to hold a heavier silence. Kate's been staying later at work recently, her explanations a little too detailed, her smile a little too bright when she finally comes home. Sometimes the biggest betrayals start with the smallest changes, and sometimes, like a safe with a forgotten combination, the truth waits patiently to be discovered. It's amazing how many important dates you collect in 15 years of marriage. Kate's birthday, our anniversary, the day we closed on the house, the dates of our parents' birthdays, each one a potential key to what my wife was hiding. I sat in our home office that Tuesday morning, staring at the safe while my coffee grew cold. Kate was at work, probably hunched over her laptop with her reading glasses perched on her nose, completely unaware that I was about to cross a line we'd never crossed before. Trust had always been our thing. No passwords, no secrets, we'd promised each other. Yet here I was, about to break that promise because she'd broken it first. My hands were actually shaking as I knelt in front of the safe. I started with the obvious. Her birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary, both the day we met and got married. Nothing. The day we moved in together. Still nothing. Each failed attempt made my heart race faster, my palms sweatier. Then I remembered something. Last month, when she was on the phone with her sister, Kate had mentioned their dad's birthday. "It's been 5 years," she'd said, her voice soft with grief. Her father had passed away that same day 5 years ago, 2:05. The keypad beeped and the handle turned. My breath caught in my throat. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Our passports in their blue folder, the manila envelope with our wills, Kate's grandmother's jewelry box. But something felt off. The air from the safe carried a faint scent I didn't recognize, a man's cologne that wasn't mine. That's when I noticed it. The back panel of the safe didn't look quite right. The edges seemed different, like there was a shadow where there shouldn't be one. I reached in, my fingers trembling slightly, and pressed against the panel. It gave way with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. The secret compartment held a single manila envelope, thick with contents. I pulled it out, and something slipped from inside. A photograph that landed face down on the carpet. When I turned it over, the world stopped spinning. Kate was there, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. She was sitting at a restaurant I didn't recognize, her hand intertwined with someone else's across the table. A man's hand, wearing an expensive watch that caught the light. The date stamp in the corner read 3 months ago. My stomach lurched. The room suddenly felt too hot, too small, too everything. I opened the envelope with fingers that didn't feel like my own anymore. More photos spilled out, along with a small USB drive and what looked like printed text messages. I miss you already. Jack's working late again tonight. Last weekend was perfect. I wish we had more time. No one understands me like you do. Each message was like a knife, twisting deeper. I recognized the chat layout. It was from that messaging app Kate had insisted on installing for work. The timestamps went back 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of me kissing her goodbye in the morning while she was texting him. The USB drive felt heavy in my palm, a tiny rectangle of plastic containing God knows what else. I couldn't bring myself to plug it in, not yet. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put everything back in the envelope. That's when I heard it, the distant sound of a car door slamming. Kate was home early. In those few seconds of panic, something crystallized inside me. A cold, clear purpose that cut through the chaos of emotions. I carefully replaced the envelope in the hidden compartment, closed the panel, and shut the safe. By the time Kate walked in, I was at my desk, staring at my laptop screen like any other normal day. But nothing would ever be normal again. That night was the longest performance of my life. I sat across from Kate at dinner, watching her cut her chicken into precise pieces, listening to her talk about her day at the office. Every gesture, every word, now carried a double meaning. When she mentioned a challenging client, was she talking about him? When she checked her phone, was she sending him messages? "You're quiet tonight," she said, reaching across to touch my hand. Her wedding ring caught the light, and I had to fight the urge to pull away. The same hand I'd seen in those photographs, reaching for someone else. "Just tired," I replied, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Big order coming up." After dinner, I escaped to the garage, my workshop where I build custom furniture for clients. The familiar smell of sawdust and varnish usually calmed me, but not tonight. I sat at my workbench, staring at a half-finished table, while my mind raced through the evidence hidden in our safe. 8 months. While I was here creating things with my hands, believing in our life together, Kate had been methodically destroying everything we'd built. The safe, our safe, had become her weapon of choice, the perfect hiding place right under my nose. That's when it hit me. She'd chosen the safe because she thought it was secure, because she believed she controlled it. But now I had something she didn't know about. Access. And knowledge, as they say, is power. I pulled out my phone and created a new note, my fingers moving with purpose. 1. Copy everything tomorrow while she's at work. 2. Leave the originals exactly as found. 3. Change the safe combination. 4. Watch and wait. The plan was forming, clear and cold as ice. Kate had turned our safe into her secret keeper. Fine. Let's see how she likes it when her fortress becomes her prison. I looked up at our house through the garage window. Kate was in the kitchen, washing dishes, probably thinking everything was still perfectly safe. She had no idea that her carefully constructed world of lies was about to collapse, one calculated move at a time. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Kate kissed me goodbye, her concern seemingly genuine as she felt my forehead for a fever. "Get some rest, honey," she said, adjusting her blazer, the blue one I'd bought her for Christmas. "I'll try to come home early." I waited until her car disappeared around the corner before springing into action. The USB drive was first. My hands were steady now as I copied every file onto my laptop. The photos loaded one by one, each a fresh punch to the gut. Kate at various restaurants, hotels, parks, always with him, always smiling that smile I thought belonged to me. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with a kind of polished look that spoke of expensive gyms and designer suits. In one photo, they were at what looked like a beach resort. The timestamp matched Kate's business conference in San Diego 3 months ago. The text messages were worse, hundreds of them spanning months. Not just plans and sweet nothings, but complaints about me, about our life. Jack's so predictable, always in his workshop, living in his own world. I feel more alive with you in an hour than I do with him in a week. Sometimes I look at him and wonder how I ended up settling for such a simple life. Each word was acid in my veins, but I forced myself to read every single message. I needed to understand the depth of her betrayal, the full scope of her deception. Knowledge is power, and I intended to have both. Then came the methodical documentation. I photographed everything exactly as it was placed in the safe, created backups of all digital files, and even recorded a video of myself opening the hidden compartment, just in case. Everything was saved in triplicate: cloud storage, external hard drive, and a second USB drive I would store at my workshop. By noon, I had assembled a complete dossier of my wife's infidelity. But that was just phase 1. Phase 2 required more finesse. I called my bank and initiated a transfer of half our savings into a new, separate account. Nothing illegal, just protecting assets before the storm hit. Then I called my lawyer, scheduling a routine business consultation for the following week. Finally, I contacted a private investigator, paying extra for rush surveillance. I needed to know their patterns, their meeting spots, their routines. The last step was the safe itself. I input a new combination, 1913, the street number of my first workshop, a detail so personal to me that Kate would never guess it. As the mechanism clicked into place, I felt a grim satisfaction. The trap was set. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my workshop actually building furniture. The rhythm of sawing and sanding helped clear my mind, helped me focus on the steps ahead. Each piece of wood joined perfectly with the next, each measurement precise, each cut exact, just like my plan needed to be. Kate called around 4, as expected. "Feeling any better, honey?" "Much better," I replied, and for the first time since yesterday, I wasn't lying. Actually getting some work done in the workshop. "That's good," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice, relief that I was behaving normally, that her secret was still safe. "I should be home by 6. Want me to pick up soup from that place you like?" "Perfect," I said, running my hand along the smooth edge of a newly cut board. "Everything's perfect." 3 days passed, each one a carefully orchestrated performance. I watched Kate grow increasingly anxious as she realized she couldn't access the safe. She'd try when she thought I wasn't looking, inputting different combinations with trembling fingers. Each failed attempt made her shoulders tense just a little more. The private investigator's first report arrived in my encrypted email. Her late meetings were exactly what I expected. Dinners at upscale restaurants outside the city, followed by visits to a boutique hotel downtown. His name was Michael Chen, 34, recently divorced investment banker. They met every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. The predictability of their betrayal was almost insulting. "Jack," Kate approached me in my workshop that evening, trying to sound casual. "Did you change the safe combination? I need to get some documents for work." I looked up from the cabinet I was staining, meeting her eyes. "Yeah, I did. Sorry, should have mentioned it." I watched her face carefully as I continued. "Been thinking about security lately. Strange how things you think are secure can turn out to be vulnerable." She paled slightly but recovered quickly. Oh? What made you start thinking about that? Just something I read about hidden compartments and secret spaces, I said, returning to my staining. Fascinating stuff. Did you know some safes have false backs? People hiding all sorts of things in plain sight. The brush slipped from her fingers, leaving a dark streak on the concrete floor. I didn't know that. Her voice was barely a whisper. The new code is pretty simple, I continued, watching her from the corner of my eye. Want me to show you? No, the response came too quickly. I mean, not right now. I just remembered the documents aren't urgent. Maybe tomorrow? I shrugged. Sure, though you might want to get them soon. I'm thinking of having the safe serviced next week. The mechanism's been making strange sounds. Kate practically fled from the workshop. Through the window, I watched her pull out her phone the moment she reached the garden, fingers flying over the keyboard. Warning him, no doubt. The PI would confirm it later. That night, she barely touched her dinner. I'd started noticing other changes, too. She was checking her phone constantly, but always angled away from me. She'd taken to carrying her laptop between rooms instead of leaving it on her desk. Small signs of a woman whose carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. I maintained my routine, built furniture, paid bills, asked about her day. But I'd started dropping little comments here and there, each one carefully crafted to increase the pressure. Hey, remember that beach resort in San Diego you mentioned from your business trip? A client wants to book it for his anniversary. Which one was it again? Or, I was organizing some receipts for taxes. Seems like we're missing some restaurant charges from the past few months. Would those be in the safe? Each question was a pebble in an avalanche I was slowly building. Each seemingly innocent comment made her flinch just a little more. The weight of her secrets was beginning to crush her, and I hadn't even played my strongest cards yet. The best part? She couldn't even talk to him about it. Not really. Because how do you tell your lover that your husband might know everything without admitting you kept evidence of the affair? Evidence that was now locked away in a safe you couldn't access? I almost pitied her. Almost. A week into my psychological siege, the PI sent me something interesting. Surveillance photos of Kate and Michael having what appeared to be an argument outside their usual hotel. Her body language was tense, defensive. His showed frustration. They left separately that day. No intimate dinner, no overnight stay. They were cracking. I decided it was time to turn up the heat. That evening, I left my laptop open on the kitchen counter while I made dinner, a PDF of divorce laws accidentally visible on the screen. Kate walked in, saw it, and nearly dropped her coffee mug. Just some research for a friend, I said casually, stirring the pasta. Tom and Sarah are having problems. Makes you think, doesn't it, how easily things can fall apart. Kate mumbled something about a headache and disappeared upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard her trying the safe again. The next morning, I received an alert from the tracking software I'd installed on our home network. Kate had been searching for locksmiths at 3 a.m., professional safecrackers, each search making her more desperate, each dead end pushing her closer to the edge. None of them would help, of course, not without proof of ownership I'd need to provide. She started making mistakes. The next Tuesday, she told me she had a client dinner, but I knew her regular rendezvous day had changed. The PI confirmed she spent 2 hours sitting alone in her car in the hotel parking lot. Michael never showed. "Everything okay?" I asked when she came home, her makeup slightly smeared. "You seem stressed lately." "I'm fine," she snapped, then immediately tried to soften her tone. "Just work stuff." "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" I reached for her hand, watching her try not to flinch at my touch. "No matter what it is. No secrets between us, remember?" She burst into tears and ran to the bathroom. I heard her retching behind the locked door. The next day I took it further. I left a handwritten note on her pillow before leaving for work. Need to talk about what I found. Tonight. Important. No signature needed. She called in sick to work that day. The PI reported she spent hours driving aimlessly around the city, making multiple stops at places she and Michael used to meet. He wasn't at any of them. When I came home, she was sitting in the dark living room, still in her robe, looking like she'd aged years in a day. "Jack," her voice was hoarse, "about your note." I pretended to look confused. "Note?" "Oh, yeah, sorry about being mysterious. I found those old photo albums in the attic. Thought we could go through them together. Been feeling nostalgic lately." The relief that flooded her face was painful to watch. But it wouldn't last long, because while she'd been driving around town in panic, I'd been setting up the final pieces of my plan. The safe wasn't just her prison anymore, it was about to become her judgment day. I took out my phone and pulled up my calendar. "Hey, how about we have a dinner party this weekend? Invite some friends over." I smiled, watching her try to maintain composure. "Maybe Michael from your office could come? You've mentioned him a few times, but I've never met him." She didn't just pale this time. She looked like she might pass out. "Unless," I added softly, "there's something you'd like to tell me first?" Kate sat frozen on our couch, her face a mask of terror. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, broken only by the soft hum of our AC and the thundering of my own heart. "Jack, She started, then stopped, her hands twisting in her lap. The diamond of her wedding ring caught the light, throwing tiny fractured rainbows on the wall. "Let me help you out," I said, my voice steady. I pulled out my phone and started reading. "Miss you already. Jack's working late again tonight." That was 8 months ago, Kate. The first message you sent him. Want to hear more? I have hundreds. She made a sound like she'd been punched. "How did you—" "The safe?" I gave a hollow laugh. "You know, for an accountant, you made some pretty basic security mistakes, using your father's death date as the combination, keeping evidence where you thought no one would look." I leaned forward. "A false back panel, really?" "You went through my private things." Anger flashed across her face, quickly replaced by fear when she realized how ridiculous that sounded. "Private things?" The words tasted bitter. "You mean the photos of you and Michael at that beach resort in San Diego during your business conference? Or maybe the hotel receipts, the love letters? Tell me, Kate, which private things are you most upset about me discovering?" She started to cry, silent tears tracking mascara down her cheeks. "It's not what you think." "Don't." My voice cut through her words like a blade. "Don't you dare try to minimize this. I've read every message, seen every photo, watched you lie to my face day after day while you built your little hidden life with him." I never meant to. To what? Get caught? I stood up, walking to the safe mounted on our office wall. "You know what the funny thing is? All these years, I trusted you completely. Never once thought to question why you suddenly needed private access to our safe. Never wondered why you started keeping your phone face down, because that's what trust is, Kate, or was." I punched in the combination, watching her flinch at each beep. The door swung open with a soft click. "Go ahead," I said. "Look inside. Everything's exactly where you left it. Every photo, every message, every piece of evidence you thought was so well hidden. I want you to take it all out." Her legs were shaking as she approached the safe. When she reached for the false back panel, her fingers trembled so badly she could barely press the release. "Why?" she whispered, clutching the manila envelope to her chest. "Why did you wait? Why didn't you say something when you first found out?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because I wanted you to feel what I felt, Kate, that growing suspicion, that gnawing doubt, that terrible certainty that everything you thought was secure was actually falling apart." I took the envelope from her unresisting hands, but mostly I waited because I wanted to do this right. And we're just getting started. I pulled out my laptop and opened it on the coffee table. Kate remained standing by the safe, clutching the wall for support, as if her legs might give out at any moment. "Sit down," I said quietly. "You'll want to see this." She moved like a sleepwalker, sinking into the armchair across from me. I turned the screen toward her and started the slideshow I'd prepared. "This is you and Michael last Tuesday. Notice how he didn't show up? You sat in that hotel parking lot for 2 hours? Click. Here's the week before your usual table at La Maison. Click. And here's my personal favorite, you two at the Marina Bay Resort in San Diego, where you were supposedly attending a tax law seminar." You had me followed?" Her voice was barely audible. "Oh, that's just the beginning." I pulled up another window. "Here's your text message history for the past week. Fascinating stuff. You getting increasingly paranoid, him getting increasingly distant. Did you know he's been interviewing for jobs in Chicago?" "No. Guess he didn't mention that during your afternoon delights." She flinched at each revelation, each new piece of evidence I laid before her. I continued, my voice maintaining its eerily calm tone. "But here's where it gets really interesting." I opened a financial spreadsheet. "You've been moving money, Kate, small amounts, trying to be clever about it. Building yourself a little nest egg? Or was it insurance in case this all went wrong?" "That's my personal account," she protested weakly. "Was your personal account. I've already spoken to my lawyer. Every transfer, every hidden deposit, it's all documented, along with the hours you spent with Michael during work time. Your firm's ethics board might have something to say about billing clients while you were actually at the Westbrook Hotel." The color drained from her face. "You wouldn't?" "Wouldn't I?" I leaned forward. "You know what I discovered, Kate?" The more I dug, the more I found. It's amazing what people will tell you when you start asking questions. Like Carol from your office. She was quite helpful once I mentioned possibly having to depose the entire accounting department for our divorce proceedings. "Divorce?" The word seemed to snap something in her. "Jack, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake. I'll end it. I'll do anything." "End it?" I laughed, and the sound made her shrink back. "Kate, it ended the moment I found that hidden compartment. Everything since then has just been, let's call it accounting, balancing the books." I pulled out my phone and hit play on a recording. "I feel more alive with you in an hour than I do with him in a week." Her own voice filled the room, followed by Michael's laughter. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." "That's funny," I said, pausing the playback. "That's exactly what I wanted to say when I first heard this. When I first saw those photos. When I realized that the woman I loved, the life we built, it was all just, what did you call it in your messages? Oh, right. Settling for a simple life." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where we used to have summer barbecues with friends. Friends who would soon know everything. "Here's what's going to happen next." I turned back to her. "In about 30 minutes, Michael is going to receive an email. Actually, several emails. One contains every photo, message, and piece of evidence I have. Another is addressed to his firm's HR department. A third to your firm's ethics committee. And my personal favorite, one to his ex-wife's lawyer, with some interesting information about assets he failed to disclose during their divorce." Kate's face went from pale to gray. "You can't... His career... Just like you couldn't destroy our marriage? The thing is, Kate, I learned from you. You taught me all about keeping evidence safe, about hidden compartments, about secrets." I smiled and watched her shudder. "I just got better at it than you." Kate's phone buzzed on the coffee table, then again, and again. A cascade of notifications that made her jump, like each one was an electric shock. She reached for it with trembling hands. "That'll be Michael," I said, checking my watch. "Right on schedule. The emails just went out. You should read his messages. It's remarkable how quickly someone can turn on you when their whole world starts to crumble." She unlocked her phone, her face crumpling as she read. He's blaming me. Says I promised him the safe was secure. Says I've ruined everything." Her voice broke. "He's blocking my number." "Funny how a secret affair is like a house of cards," I mused, sitting back down. "Pull out one carefully placed piece, and the whole thing collapses." Tell me, did you ever wonder why I spent so much time in my workshop? All those hours, just building things?" She looked up from her phone, confused by the sudden change in topic. "It taught me patience," I continued, "the importance of planning, of measuring twice, cutting once, of understanding that sometimes, to create something beautiful, you have to completely tear down what was there before." Her phone kept buzzing, email notifications now. Her company, his company, their shared world, imploding in real time. "I could have just thrown your evidence in your face the day I found it," I said. "Could have raged and screamed and destroyed things. But that would have been simple. And you always did hate simplicity, didn't you?" "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. "Want?" I smiled. "I don't want anything from you, Kate. I already have everything I need. The satisfaction of watching you squirm these past weeks. The joy of dismantling your affair piece by piece. The pleasure of knowing that right now Michael is probably calling his lawyer in a panic." I stood up and walked to the safe, running my fingers along its edge. "You know what the real irony is? This safe, it was supposed to protect our most precious things, our documents, our memories, our future. Instead, you turned it into a coffin for our marriage. But that's okay, because I turned it into something else, a weapon." She stared at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. "I never thought you could be so calculating, cruel," I finished for her. "No, you didn't. That was your biggest mistake. You thought you knew everything about me, the simple craftsman living in his own world. But people can surprise you, Kate. They can have hidden depths, secret compartments, you might say." I picked up the manila envelope, now empty of its secrets. "The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow. My lawyer has been quite thorough, every piece of evidence documented, every betrayal cataloged. You might want to start looking for a new job and a new place to live." Kate stood on shaky legs, her world completely shattered. "All these weeks, you were just playing with me?" "No, Kate, I was teaching you something, about consequences, about karma." I held out the empty envelope, "about the danger of keeping your secrets in someone else's safe." Her phone buzzed one final time. She looked at it, then let out a soft, broken sound. "That," I said, "would be the email from Michael's ex-wife's lawyer. Apparently she's very interested in reopening their settlement." 6 months later, I stood in my new workshop, larger and better equipped than my old garage space. The business had expanded. Turns out, divorce is a fantastic motivation for throwing yourself into work. I was finishing up a custom dining room set when my lawyer called. "The house sale just closed," she said. "Funds will be in your account by tomorrow, and Kate's firm finally settled the ethics investigation. She's been disbarred in 3 states. I ran my hand along the smooth mahogany surface of the table I'd just finished. "And Michael?" "Last I heard, he's working at a regional bank in Milwaukee, quite a step down from investment banking. His ex-wife's new settlement took most of what he had left after the firms were done with him." I thanked her and hung up, feeling nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, no pain. Just a calm certainty that justice had been served. The safe from our old house sat in the corner of my new workshop. I'd kept it as a reminder, though I'd removed the false back panel. Inside were new documents now, the deed to my expanding business, investment papers, and plans for the future. No more secrets, no more lies. My phone buzzed, a text from Carol, Kate's former co-worker who'd been so helpful during my investigation. She'd left the accounting firm too, started her own business. We'd been having coffee occasionally, talking about work, life, healing. Nothing romantic. We were both too scarred for that right now. But it was nice having someone who understood. "Heard Kay finally left town," her message read. "You okay?" I thought about that as I cleaned my tools. Was I okay? The man I was 8 months ago would have been devastated, broken, lost. But I wasn't that man anymore. That evening, I met Tom and Sarah for dinner, the friends I'd mentioned to Kate during my psychological warfare, the ones supposedly having problems. They were actually rock solid, had been in on my plan the whole time. They'd helped me stage some of those accidental conversations Kate had overheard, played their parts perfectly. "Got something for you," Tom said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a photo, Kate looking haggard and defeated, loading boxes into her car outside her cut-rate apartment. Sarah's sister saw her at the grocery store, said she was telling anyone who'd listen that her ex-husband was some kind of mastermind who destroyed her life. I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. Mastermind? I just paid attention to details, something she should have done. "You know," Sarah leaned forward, "when you first told us what you were planning, we were worried. Thought revenge might consume you, leave you bitter." "That's the thing about revenge," I said, sipping my bourbon. "Everyone thinks it has to be hot and violent, all burning rage and sudden actions. But the best revenge is like crafting fine furniture. It takes patience, precision, and a steady hand." I thought about Kate, about Michael, about their shattered lives. I hadn't raised my voice once during the whole process, hadn't broken anything, hadn't made a scene. I'd simply taken their secrets and turned them into weapons, used their own choices to destroy them. It was elegant in its way. Later that night, in my new home, I sat in my study looking at the empty wall where the safe used to be. I'd been thinking about getting a new one, something modern with digital backup and fingerprint recognition, not because I had secrets to keep, but because sometimes the best way to move forward is to face your fears, transform them into strength. My phone buzzed again, another text from Carol. "Coffee tomorrow?" I looked at the message for a long moment, thinking about trust and betrayal, about secrets and lies, about healing and moving forward, about how sometimes the things that break us can also rebuild us stronger than before. "Sure," I typed back, "but this time, let's try that new place downtown. I'm tired of old haunts." The thing about revenge is that it can either destroy you or transform you. The trick is to choose the path that leaves you whole at the end. I'd chosen to let it remake me. More cautious, yes, but also stronger, smarter, more aware of both the darkness and light in people. I glanced one last time at the empty wall. Tomorrow, I'd call about that new safe. Something secure but transparent. Something that could protect without hiding, guard without deceiving. After all, I had a future to protect now, and this time I would do it right.